Welcome along, fans of architectural and American history. This is Scott Cardinal, and this time around we're going to travel back in time to the early 1900s, and I'm going to tell you the story of the Apthorp. The reason for micro lessons such as this is to celebrate the hard work and great triumphs of visionary people, such as builders and architects. It's also to help people understand what the architectural and design elements are when they look at buildings. Also, studying architecture and design can help people increase their powers of observation, and that can be used in other areas of their lives. So, let's get rolling. The Apthorp is a historic apartment building on the Upper West Side of Manhattan in New York City. It occupies the full block between Broadway, West End Avenue, and West 78th and 79th Streets. That's a couple of blocks west of the American Museum of Natural History, and a few blocks west of Central Park, and a block east from Riverside Drive. Construction began in 1906 and was completed in 1908. The Apthorp was built by the Astor Estate on behalf of William Waldorf Astor, who, at the time, was America's wealthiest man. Which sounds kind of strange to say, since in 1899 he gave up his American citizenship to become a British subject. But at his behest, his estate continued buying and developing properties, and so his estate used the architectural firm of Clinton and Russell to design the Astor Apartments at Broadway and 75th Street. The partners, Charles W. Clinton and William Hamilton Russell, were hired 6 years later to design the Apthorp, and that was on land that Astor had purchased back in 1879. Astor named the building as a nod to the 300-acre, 18th century farm of Charles Ward Apthorp, on which land the site stood. Back then, the Upper West Side area was known as Bloomingdale. It was a rural village with hills and meadows. Apthorp's mansion was built in 1764, and it was located on a hill near where 91st and Columbus are today. It had been demolished by the city in 1891. The 18th century mansion overlooked the Hudson River and the New Jersey Palisades. Although it was referred to as the Apthorp Mansion, it was called Elmwood for the beautiful elm trees on the property. When he died in 1797, his 10 children divided and sold off the land. As previously mentioned, the Apthorp was designed by architects Clinton and Russell, and it looks like a giant Florentine palazzo, and that's because their inspiration was the Pitti Palace in Florence, Italy. The project cost Astor a reported $6 million, which would be about $170 million today. As construction drew to a close, newspapers across the country began describing the building. And they said such things as, 100 commodious homes under one roof. This will be the unique feature of a massive structure almost completed by William Waldorf Astor on the Upper West Side of this city. And they also wrote, when finished, this mammoth apartment house will be the most striking feature on the Upper West Side. And they also wrote that the location is right in the heart of one of the finest residential districts of the city. Originally, the main entrance was to be on Broadway with a ramp from West End Avenue leading directly down to a lower level for deliveries. At the center, Astor intended a 2-level garden with flowers and fountains. And over the next few years, the project varied from 9 to 20 stories. But when final plans were made in 1906, the Apthorp would eventually be a regal 12-story, limestone-fronted, Italian Renaissance Revival-style building. So now let's check the building out. For starters, it is built like a fabulous fortress. It really is a stunning building to look at from every angle. The Apthorp has symmetrical facades, and along the sidewalk can be seen a series of low walls. It is broken up periodically for ground floor doorways on all sides. And there is a 3-story rusticated base, and along the ground floor and third floors you can see arch-headed windows. And in between, along the second floor, are rectangular windows. And each corner has been emphasized by a wide band of rustication for its entire height. There are decorative horizontal bands, and above the arch-headed windows of the third floor is a projecting cornice. The middle section consists of floors 4 through 10. All of the windows are rectangular except for the 10th floor, which has arch-headed windows. And you can see that there are stone balconies on every corner of the 5th floor. In the center of the middle section can be seen 4 limestone sculptures representing the 4 seasons. In the center area of the middle section is rustication, and some of the windows have curved pediments and moldings on the tops and bottoms. Vertical rusticated areas signalize the center portion of these great walls, and there are large portions of smooth ashlar masonry. Now looking up towards the top section, you can see that consists of floors 11 and 12. And the 11th floor has rectangular-shaped windows, and the 12th floor has arch-headed windows. There are also pilasters. Also on the corners and along the top below the boldly projecting cornice are pretty designs of winged infants. The Apthorp has a rooftop pavilion and a loggia. And you're probably saying, what in the world is a loggia? Well, that's the Italian word for lodge, and a loggia is a covered space running along the length of a building similar to a porch, but with columns or arches on the open side. Now heading back down to the bottom, the Apthorp has two monumental arched entrances. One is on Broadway and the other is on West End Avenue. They're identical. Each has 3-story Corinthian pilasters topped with 4 sculptural female figures and bas-reliefs of draped females holding up garlands, and they're reclined in the spandrels. Now staying within the entry, let's check out the gates. Each side has very elaborate wrought iron gates with spear-headed finials that exude an air of elegance. They evoke the past with their old-world charm. Incidentally, for anyone who doesn't know what wrought iron means, it basically refers to iron that's been molded and worked into intricate designs. And these are excellent examples of ornamental metalwork with sturdy spires and spectacular hand-forged scrollwork by true artisans. In the center are in-swinging gates for vehicles. And it has a gently arched top that spans across the double gate with swooping curlicues, fancy scrolls, and the word Apthorp in gold. The arch is finished with an elaborate gold top finial that is reminiscent of a pineapple, which is a symbol of welcome, good cheer, and human warmth. And obviously there are wrought iron latches and hinges, and the entry handles have brass handles and plates. And the gates swing in from sturdy iron posts with curls and flourishes. And if you look to the side, there are in-swinging pedestrian gates. There are also exquisite wrought iron 6-light lanterns above each pedestrian gate. Once you pass through these gates, you enter a barrel-vaulted entry that leads to the large central courtyard. But before we get there, let's check out this entryway. On the left side are wall niches, which are curved spaces in a wall that are designed to display statues and vases. The bottoms have flat bases for statuary or planters, and the tops are shell-shaped. In the center is a fancy door with protruding framework, header, scrolling, corbels, and you can see an ornate pediment. Also, there is a wall-mounted locking metal letterbox. And there are cast iron lanterns on the rusticated walls. The lanterns match the ones above the pedestrian gates. At the very end of the entry, just before you get to the courtyard, is a black gatehouse with gold-colored trim. And looking back up, at the top of the rusticated walls is a frieze with decorative designs, and above that is the barrel-vaulted roof that really is remarkable. Its design includes a series of recessed patterns and panels in the shape of square boxes, framed with circular and other decorative designs. Now, here's where things really get exciting. Once you pass through the vaulted entryway and past the gatehouse, you enter the massive courtyard. It is 95 feet by 134 feet. That's so big that another building could fit right inside of it. I mean, really, it's the size of a small park. And it's at this point that you see that the Apthorp is formally divided into 4 buildings, A through D, each of which have their own lobbies. Now, at the point of this production, there are over 150 luxury apartments. Now, in the center, you can see a circular driveway. And there is a pair of round marble fountains and marble benches. And looking around, you can see statuary, lanterns with white globes, and a lot of greenery. The courtyard's facades are rusticated limestone. And the 1st, 3rd, and 11th stories have arched windows. And each angled corner has an awning-covered entrance that lead to the lobbies. According to an account in Architects and Builders magazine in 1908, the private courtyard was laid out in formal style. The architects had shifted the basement ramp to 79th Street, leaving two grand barrel-vaulted entries facing Broadway and West End Avenue. In the center of the court, there was a display of horticulture that would grace a botanical garden. The great Nora Ephron, who was a resident of the Apthorp, wrote the following: "Enter the courtyard and the city falls away. You find yourself in the embrace of a beautiful, sheltered park. There are stone benches where you can sit in the afternoon as your children run merrily around, ride their bicycles, fight with one another, and threaten to fall into the fountain and drown. In the spring, there are tulips and azaleas. In the summer, pale blue hostas and hydrangeas." She then added, "Most people who don't live in New York have no idea that New Yorkers have exactly the same sense of neighborhood that supposedly exists in small-town America. In the Apthorp, this sense is magnified because the courtyard provides countless opportunities for residents to bump into one another and eventually learn one another's names. At Halloween, those of us with small children turn the courtyard street lamps into a fantasy of pumpkin-headed ghosts. In December, the landlords erected an electric menorah, which coexisted with a Christmas tree covered with twinkle lights." And that's from an article that Nora Ephron wrote about living at the Apthorp, which I recommend to everybody, and I'll see if I can put a link to it in the description below. As mentioned previously, the building is divided into 4 sections. Each corner has its own lobby. The Apthorp lobbies have elegant hand-cut mosaic tiles, limestone accents, and coffered ceilings. Originally, there were 10 apartments per floor. During the 1930s and 1940s, these were divided into smaller units. Each of the original suites had 12 to 14-foot ceilings and contained a room-sized foyer with a beautiful mosaic tile floor. Also, glass-paneled French doors were placed throughout the apartments. Interestingly, the penthouses were, for quite a long time, the smallest, dingiest units because they were once used as servants' quarters. Now, I know people find that really difficult to believe today, but the same goes with the Dakota and so many other buildings back then. Wealthy people just simply didn't want to live on the top floor. That's where the servants lived. But back to the Apthorp, the building has elevator persons and it has a garage. The Apthorp's residents were converted into luxury condos in 2008, and they began to sell for roughly $3,000 per square foot. There are also now commercial spaces on the Broadway ground floor. Spaces change over time, but at one point there were at least 5 two-story apartments in the Apthorp. The living rooms were placed on the ground floor, and the bedrooms were placed on the floor above. Also at one point there were 12 apartments on the 3rd floor, and they varied from 6 rooms with a bath to 9 rooms and 3 baths. Each of the upper floors held 10 apartments each. Today, the apartments have state-of-the-art kitchens with top-of-the-line cabinetry and appliances. And amenities at the Apthorp include 24-hour doorman and concierge services. There's also a fitness center, there's an entertainment suite with a bar, there's a children's playroom, and I mentioned the on-site parking garage. There's also a live-in superintendent, and there are individual storage rooms that are available for purchase. Apthorp resident Ronald Bloomer wrote the following about the original residences. Each huge apartment boasted a restaurant-sized kitchen with an iceless icebox, cooled by a compression system in the basement, which also housed the building's own electric generating plant. The apartments had massive mosaic-floored entry halls, numerous bathrooms, gas fireplaces, servants' quarters in the back halls and on the roof, and an elaborate electrical system so that residents could summon their various maids and butlers at the push of a button. Just like other grand apartment buildings in New York City, the Apthorp has always been filled with interesting residents, some of whom were very famous, including Douglas Fairbanks Sr., Nora Ephron, Nicholas Pileggi, Joseph Heller, Delia Ephron, George Balanchine, Al Pacino, Conan O'Brien, Jennifer Hudson, Cyndi Lauper, Lena Horne, and Steve Kroft. The Apthorp was designated a New York City landmark in 1969, and they wrote the following: "On the basis of a careful consideration of the history, the architecture, and other features of this building, the Landmarks Preservation Commission finds that the Apthorp Apartments has a special character, special historical and aesthetic interest, and a value as part of the development, heritage, and cultural characteristics of New York City. The Commission further finds that among its important qualities, the Apthorp Apartments, following the lead of the Dakota at 72nd Street, is one of the first apartments with a central drive-in courtyard. That is an outstanding example of Italian Renaissance architecture modified to meet the needs of an early 20th century apartment house. And that, located on its conspicuous site, it is an adornment to the city. And the Apthorp was also added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1978. The building was sold in 2006 for $426 million, and a deal was made with an outside partner which provided $95 million for renovations. At the time of the sale, 100 of the 163 rental units were rent stabilized. And in 2008, the Apthorp became a condominium. And so this includes the story of and a little bit of a micro lesson about the Apthorp. If you want to support my research, please do me a favor and sign up for a subscription at my website, audibleadventures.com. That website also has a page with links to all of my books. You could also download the Audible Adventures app for iPhone and Android. If you have any thoughts about this subject matter, please put those in the comments below and share what's on your mind. If you enjoyed this video, please do me a favor and share it, and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Until next time, I wish you safe travels on all your journeys.